Welcome to I Wish Somebody Told Me, the podcast where we break down the financial, estate planning, and wealth building conversations that most of us wish somebody had explained a little earlier. Today, we're talking about something I believe every homeowner, business owner, parent, and person building wealth should at least understand: the revocable living trust. You've probably heard somebody say, you need a trust. But what exactly does that mean? What does a trust actually do? And just as importantly, what happens after you create one? Because here's something a lot of people don't realize: signing the trust document is only part of the process. You also need to properly fund the trust. So today, I'm going to break this down in plain English. And as always, this is general educational information, not individualized legal, tax, or financial advice. Your situation may require guidance from an estate planning attorney, tax professional, or financial advisor like myself. Let's get into it. So, what is a revocable living trust? Think of a trust as a legal structure designed to hold and manage assets. When you establish a revocable living trust, you're called the grantor or the settlor. That's the person creating the trust. Then you have the trustee. That's the person responsible for managing the assets held by the trust. With a typical revocable living trust, you can generally be both the person creating the trust and the initial trustee. In other words, you're not necessarily giving up control of your property. You can still live in your house, you can still manage your investments, you can still buy and sell assets. And because the trust is revocable, you can generally amend it or revoke it during your lifetime while you still have capacity. Then you name a successor trustee. That's the person or institution you've selected to take over management of the trust when the circumstances described in your trust require it, commonly after your death or incapacity. And finally, you identify your beneficiaries. Those are the people or organizations that ultimately benefit from the trust. So why would someone want a trust? One of the biggest reasons people establish living trust is probate planning. Probate is the court-supervised process used to administer certain assets after someone dies. Depending on where you live, the assets involved, and the complexity of the estate, probate can involve court filings, administrative requirements, professional fees, and significant amounts of time. A properly structured and properly funded living trust can allow assets held by the trust to be administered according to the trust instructions without those assets going through the traditional probate process. And notice what I just said: properly funded. We're going to come back to that. Another potential benefit is incapacity planning. Estate planning isn't only about what happens when you die, what happens if you're alive, but you're temporarily or permanently unable to manage your financial affairs. Your trust can contain instructions regarding how trust assets should be managed and when a successor trustee can step in. That's an important distinction. A good estate plan isn't just a death plan, it's also a plan for your life. Now, first, a will and a trust are not the same thing. This is a very common misconception. People will say, I already have a will, so why would I need a trust? A will and a living trust can work together, but they serve different functions. Your will provides instructions concerning your estate at death, including matters that may not be handled through your trust. Your trust governs assets that have actually been transferred into or otherwise properly connected to the trust. And this brings us to one of the most important concepts in this entire episode. You have to fund the trust. Imagine you spend the time and money to create a beautiful trust. The document says exactly what you want. You've selected your successor trustee. You've identified your beneficiaries. Everything looks perfect. Then you put it into a binder and stick it into a drawer. But you never transfer your house into the trust. Never address your financial accounts. You never address your business ownership. You never review your beneficiary designations. You never actually fund the trust. That can create a major problem. Think of your trust like a safe. You can buy the strongest safe in the world, but if you leave all of your valuables sitting outside of it, the safe can't protect what's not inside. The same basic concept applies here. Creating the trust establishes the structure. Funding the trust puts the appropriate assets into that structure. So, what does funding a trust actually mean? Funding can look different depending on the asset. For real estate, it may involve preparing and recording a new deed transferring ownership into the trust. For a bank or taxable investment account, it may involve retitling the account into the name of the trust. If you own a business, your attorney may determine that an LLC membership interest, shares, or another ownership interest should be assigned to the trust, subject to governing agreements and applicable law. But this is where you have to be careful. Not every asset should simply be retitled into your trust. Retirement accounts are a great example. You generally don't just change ownership of an IRA or a 401k to your living trust during your lifetime. Those assets typically pass according to their beneficiary designations, and changing ownership could create significant tax consequences. Life insurance is another area where ownership and beneficiary designations require intentional planning. That's why estate planning isn't just about filling out a document online. You have to look at how your entire financial life fits together. Next, your beneficiary designations matter. Here's something else I want you to understand. Certain assets can pass directly to named beneficiaries regardless of what your trust says. Retirement accounts and life insurance policies are common examples. So imagine your trust says one thing, but an old beneficiary designation says something completely different. That can create unintended results. Maybe you established your beneficiaries 10 years ago. Maybe you've gotten married since then. Maybe you've had children. Maybe someone you previously named is no longer a part of your life. Your estate plan needs to be coordinated with those beneficiary designations. This is why I tell people estate planning is not just about documents. It's about coordinating all aspects of your life. Your trust, your will, your property, your investments, retirement accounts, insurance, your business interests, they all need to work together. So what happens after you pass away? Let's say you've done everything correctly. You've established the trust, properly funded it, kept your beneficiary designations coordinated with your overall estate plan. When you pass away, your successor trustee steps in according to the terms of the trust. The trustee identifies and manages the trust assets, addresses expenses and obligations as required, and ultimately administers or distributes the property according to the instructions that you've left behind. And your instructions can be much more detailed than simply, give everything to my kids. Maybe you don't want a young beneficiary receiving a large inheritance all at once. Maybe you want distributions made at certain ages. Maybe you want money available for education, housing, healthcare, or starting a business in the future. Perhaps you want assets to remain in the trust for a longer period. That's where estate planning becomes more than simply transferring money. It becomes legacy planning. You're deciding not only who receives what you've built, but also how that wealth should be managed and transferred. Now, let's be clear. A trust isn't just for the ultra wealthy. There's this idea that's been floating around that trusts are only for multimillionaires. That's simply not the right way to think about them. You don't necessarily need to be extraordinarily wealthy for estate planning to matter. If you own a home, have investment accounts, own a business, you have children, or have people who financially depend on you, there's a reason to at least understand your estate planning options. So the real question isn't, am I rich enough for a trust? The better question for you is, what do I own? Who do I want to receive it? And what's the most appropriate way to make that happen? For some people, a living trust may be part of the answer. For others, a different estate planning strategy may be appropriate. But doing nothing is still a decision. It just means you're allowing default laws and existing account designations to make many of those decisions for you. You're basically allowing the state to plan how your assets are going to be distributed. So if you remember nothing else from today's episode, remember these three things. Number one, a revocable living trust can help you create a plan for managing and transferring certain assets during your lifetime and after your death. Number two, creating the trust documents isn't enough. You need to properly fund and maintain the trust. And number three, your trust should be coordinated with the rest of your financial life, including your real estate, investment accounts, retirement accounts, insurance policies, your beneficiary designations, and your business ownership interests. Because the goal isn't simply to say, I have a trust. The goal is to create an estate plan that actually works when your family needs it. If you're ready to start thinking about how your investments, insurance, retirement planning, and estate planning strategy all fit together, schedule a consultation with my firm, Fortitude Financial. We can help you understand the financial side of your estate plan and work alongside the appropriate legal and tax professionals when necessary. I'm Jason Malone, and this has been another episode of I Wish Somebody Told Me. And hopefully, after today's conversation, living trusts are one less thing you have to say, I wish somebody told me. I'll see you on the next episode.